next generation of warfare, psychological warfare. In modern conflict, the mind is a potent weapon. Discover General Michael T. Flynn's groundbreaking guide, The Citizen's Guide to Fifth Generation Warfare. Unlock tactics, strategies, and the mindset to navigate this cognitive battlefield that we all find ourselves in. Equip yourself against manipulation and emerge unscathed. Unleash your potential. Order now.
I hope you guys are ready for another good one. I really enjoy the conversations I get to have with my guests, before we do a show. And this was definitely one that I got to enjoy. And I think you guys will understand during this show. Let me start off by reading a sentence out of an article by CBS News. This is back in September of 2023. A jury acquitted 3 men Friday in the last trial connected to planned a kidnap. Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer, a scheme that was portrayed as an example of homegrown terrorism on the eve of the 2020 presidential election. And then, as some of you that follow me on X will know, a few days ago, I was given an affidavit that's allegedly signed by Sheriff Darleaf. And I'm going to read you the first 2 sentences on this one. On March 7th, 2024, at approximately 10:45 a.m., I, Sheriff Darleaf, received a subpoena for my law enforcement file, number 21-2216, from DJ Hilson's office. The subpoena demanded that I appear at 1200 North Telegraph Road, Pontiac, Michigan, with my law enforcement files with less than 24 hours notice and no time to appear. He was asked, well, Alpha, what were they subpoenaing? Well, they wanted his evidence on the Dominion machines. Yeah, that's right. The Dominion machines, the same ones that have a lot of controversy surrounding them, or maybe facts. I don't know where everybody stands on that. So then your question is, well, Alpha, what do these 2 stories, have to do with each other? Well, stay tuned and you're going to find out. So before we do that, let's get to 2 quick sponsors, you guys. First on deck, Goldco, protecting your investments with gold and silver made simple. AlphaLikesGold.com. That's right. AlphaLikesGold.com. You've heard about the digital dollar. You've heard about Big Brother. You've heard about diversifying. I try to give you guys as many different readouts as I can when it comes to why precious metals is so important, why having gold and silver is so important. And I know there's a lot of speculation that's out there. This is what I will tell you guys. At the end of the day, I'm not God, and nor am I the president or down in the bunkers of DC. But what I do know is that when you look at the economy, you look at the people that are in charge of running our economy right now, things don't look promising. And a lot of you have worked your entire lives to have a nest egg, whether it be for you and your spouse, your children, your grandchildren, to make sure you take care of your health. And these elites will go and they will destroy what's in your portfolio to make sure that they just make a couple million more when they don't need it. And one of the things that the elites are doing is they're buying gold and silver. Now, is it an indicator to something? I don't know, maybe. But what I do know is information is key. So reach out to my partners at Goldco through AlphaLikesGold.com. And at a minimum, just get yourself the information. If it's for you, great. If it's not, then at least you have the info. And then our last commercial, and we're commercial free to the end of this show, America's favorite mustache, Mr. Landau. I'll see you guys in 60 seconds.
My towels solved a problem that we've all had with towels. You go into the stores and they feel lotiony and soft, but then you get them home and they wind dry you. That's why I made my towels. They actually work, they're soft, and they absorb. And now I'm excited to announce 2 brand new lines of my towels. What makes them the best towels ever is they're now made with 100% long staple Shapir cotton. This is a combed ring spun cotton that makes my towels even softer and more absorbent than ever. And now you get a 6-piece set for an amazing introductory sale price as low as $29.98. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to get my towels for only $29.98. Or you can get my designer premium line for just $20 more. Either way, you save 50% now on all my towels. They actually work. What a concept. This offer won't last long, so please order now.
mypillow.com.
As always, you guys can't pay me enough. I'm not going to sing it. You know, that's Mike's 80s commercial. You guys will have to live with that. My Pillow or My Store. Everybody always forgets about My Store. Go buy some coffee, cups, support this man. You know, he's at the forefront of trying to expose things. And Mike knows about cancel culture. And when you help, you know, my sponsors like Mike in effort, you also support my show. Now, let me bring on the guests you guys really want to hear from today. Bill and Mike, how you fellas doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm good, man. So first, while I was doing the intro, I went and I got the message that you sent me, Mike, on Radix Virum. And I'm like, oh, I know exactly who you're talking about. As a matter of fact, I'm going to be bringing her on the show.
Oh, good. Fantastic.
So, and so for those that are like, what are you guys talking about? There's an account. If you guys can go follow her on X, it's at Not Radix. So NOTRADIX. She's done a phenomenal documentary that's on these two gentlemen's story, as I understand it from them, that is just documents it better than anybody else has. So I would definitely say go find her on X, go watch that documentary, and then do her a solid, do these guys a solid, and then share that documentary with others to see. So super stoked when I realized, oh, I know exactly who they're talking about. But with that, you know, you guys kind of saw the teaser that I did there, you know, that this affidavit that was given to me that supposedly Sheriff Darleaf wrote. I explained to you guys how somebody in the comments section said, I think it's related to this, and brought a video, you know, where you guys were speaking pretty highly of the sheriff. And it's just funny to me in this world, and I'm sure my audience would agree, how all this stuff is just interconnected all the time. And so for those that are like, oh, I've heard about the Gretchen Whitmer, you know, kidnapping plot. Who's Bill and Mike? Well, these were guys that found themselves stuck right in the middle of this FBI corruption. So I'll give it to you guys. Where do you want to start? How did this even begin? And as we go along with the story, I'll interject and I'll ask some questions.
I'd say we start a little bit far back. In 2015, Bill and I and our good friend Phil, we started a militia called Michigan Liberty Militia. And for 5 years, we worked security at the Capitol. Different events. Yeah. You know, we worked security for people that were running for governor on multiple occasions, 2 different candidates that were running for governor. We had a good report with the FBI in 2018 when Bill had to fill out paperwork to get a permit to work security at an event.
In Rosa Park, not Rosa Park. What was that?
Lamar Park.
Lamar Park.
Yeah. So he had to fill out the paperwork to do that, and so the FBI run a background check. They said, "Oh, they're good guys," and then 2020 happened. There was Gretchen locked everybody down. We were like the worst mandates in the country.
You know, besides maybe New York.
Yeah, we couldn't buy. You couldn't go to the store and buy seeds to plant a garden. Because, you know, and then, so on April 15th, there was a Operation Gridlock where they run everybody in, but they wanted everybody to stay in their cars. So there was 100,000 cars around the Capitol and kind of just shut it down. Well, me and Bill and Phil, we started walking around the Capitol block and we talked everybody out of their cars. So pretty soon there's thousands of people on the lawn, which nobody wanted. So, April 30th happened, another event, and we were asked to work security for that one. So we're there kitted up, you know, body armor, rifles, everything. But we've been doing that for 5 years. Everybody knew who we were, you know, up to that point. And then the media had a field day with it because everybody went into the Capitol, and they're saying we stormed the Capitol. Well, Bill and I were already in the Capitol when everybody else come in. We were up above the protest. But everybody that went into the Capitol, they got COVID screened. So everybody waited in line. They had a temperature taken, everything else. But the media said...
Wait, hold on.
Yeah.
They stormed the Capitol, but it's like storm. Hold on. COVID test, results. Okay, I'm not positive. Storm. Like
they just took your temperature, you know, see if you had a fever or whatnot, you know, and it's... So the media is just... From 2020, all of 2020, they just lie about everything. I think they were done after that, you know, as far as being trusted.
Well, the part you're leaving out is the FBI was already working the Whitmer plot, I think, in April 30th, because D.N. Tuono, is that his name? He was the director in Detroit. He called the Capitol Police and told them to let these people in. It's the right type of violence they needed. What did they need it for? Good question. The FBI contacted Capitol Police, so before the people stormed the Capitol and got their COVID screenings and shouted and never broke anything, never committed violence, went in there, let their voices be heard, the FBI said to let them in.
So they were going to I think they were going to lock the Capitol down, but the FBI made them, change their thinking on that.
Now, how did you guys learn that the FBI made that call?
Through the case filings and then the testimony of the actual informant who had to testify under oath that he had contacted his handlers, and his handlers reached out, and then they were like, let him in, because they wanted the photo ops of us storming the Capitol.
Yeah.
And everybody says it was a prequel to the January 6th, right? Well, January 6th hadn't happened yet. But I would agree, after learning everything we've done, it was a prequel, because the FBI is involved in January 6th. I don't care what they say. And they also perpetrated everybody going into the Capitol. Well, because if they would have said, you're not coming in, the Capitol would have been shut down. Nobody would have came in. The FBI made that call, and everybody went in so they could get pictures to produce their story later on. These people are not stupid.
Well, D'Antonio, actually, after we got arrested, he got promoted to the D.C. field office, and he was over January 6th. So that's how they're linked together.
Yeah.
So that's something. And I want the audience to understand something. And I'm not going to say I know law in Michigan, but I would assume that law enforcement has something very similar to what we have in California. And it's, we don't get to create the exigent circumstance that we're then going to arrest people for.
Yep.
Like we don't get to do that.
That's still called entrapment. Well, here anyway.
100%. So, to hear that, there's this information comes out in the filings that the FBI is like, yeah, let them in. It's, that's dangerous, because one, what if you do have provocateurs there? What if there is somebody that's outside the scope of what they think they have under control? But then again, now that you see it, that's what they wanted. Mm-hmm. They're hoping somebody like that is there.
Well, and the crazy thing is Whitmer was in the Capitol that day, and they took, and the Wolverine Watchmen, who were the bad guys, they're the terrorist organization. Their leader is FBI informant Dan Chappell. He set them up to have a photo op in front of the door that Whitmer was hiding behind, that she was in the building. So the Watchmen get a picture taken. She's in the office behind them. And Dan set that up, and Dan got the photo op of the Watchmen standing there. Granted, Mike and I have no idea who the Watchmen are. We have security passes on. We were invited there to work security by the Patriot,
American Patriot Council.
The American Patriot Council.
Yeah.
So we have our security badges on. I'd been in the Capitol all day listening to, they had it was either, I think it was the House side was having discussions on the lockdown. We were just there listening in. Never said a word, never did anything, but I still had my kit on, like I'd been for 5 years. I'd been up in that Capitol for 5 years wearing the same exact stuff, and it's always been allowed. So after our case, after we were charged, they kept using mine and Mike's pictures of us in the Capitol. Now you're not allowed to carry guns in the Capitol, period. And only if you have a CPL and you're a representative or one of the senators or whatever, you work in that building, then you can carry there. But now it's off limit to the public. And they use that case, our case, to pass that law there as well.
Which is the FBI saying, let's create the problem, and now we can create a law. So in other words, if that's precedence, what we just told the government is we can fabricate any story that will lay the foundation for a law we want to pass later.
Yeah.
Now, I think this is a much more sinister plot than that, but at the very least, I mean, they accomplished that. That took place.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
That is crazy. So So what happens next? This stuff's coming on, and how did things start to continue to unfold?
You got invited.
Oh yeah, there was actually a meeting. Again, you got to remember it's 2020. The BLM riots are going on. They're burning down cities. They're killing people in the street.
Real terrorism.
Real terrorism. I was invited to a meeting. It was a militia meeting. There was a groups come across the state. We went down. I was invited down to Dublin, Ohio. I went down there, and there was a meeting there. There's 20 or 30 different militia leaders there that I don't know any of these people. I only knew a couple of guys that went down there. We sat there. There's some crazy talk, but then there's actual reality talk about how to protect the community, how to stand up for the people if, martial law comes into place. Turns out it's the FBI. They actually rented like the entire hotel, and they set this meeting up. And then Steve Robeson, he's the lead guy. He and his Jenny Plunk was the second. She's like the secretary of this meeting. Well, they're both FBI informants. Steve Robeson supposedly was the leader of the Wisconsin chapter of the 3% Patriot, which is actually just an FBI front. They befriended a guy named Barry.
Oh, hold on. The 3%ers is an FBI front.
The 3% or the Patriot 3%ers or the 3% Patriots. I can't remember what their name went by.
Okay.
But they, it's a front. It's a fake militia run by the FBI.
Remind me, because I want to keep your story going uninterrupted, but remind me to bring up, because the FBI questioned me about the 3%ers, and then I want to make sure I have that conversation with you guys later, but please continue.
So after he introduces himself, we all sat down, we talked. There's 20 or 30. I don't even know how many people are in this little office. We sat there and talked. A few people, they're worked up. The FBI had actually murdered one of the guys that were charged in our case. They murdered him down in Texas or Arizona. I don't know the whole story about it. So he's a little worked up. He's talking a little crazy shit on camera, but what they don't tell you is Steve and them, they already get half these guys high. They get them baked out on their mind, and then they go and start these conversations. So now you're on a high on rant, and I don't smoke weed, so I have no idea what is going on. I just get thrown in the middle of this. I'm only there for 4 or 5 hours, and I go home, and it's like a 4-hour drive. So stuff continues on happening. Steve actually provided rooms. The FBI provided rooms for them to stay there, and they kept getting them high, and they keep talking about hypothetical situations. So they record them as they're high to push a narrative to get this little plot they already had an idea of what plot they wanted to do. This whole Whitmer plot was supposed to be done in like 13 or 14 different states. They were actually trying to get it to where it looked like 14 states were going to do something to their government during these lockdowns. And obviously it was all just a bunch of bullshit, but yeah, after that we were,
Well, he's leaving out some stuff. See, Steve Robeson, he's a career criminal. He's been working with the FBI since the 80s. He's a rapist and a pedophile, and they keep hiring him. But so his whole gambit and what lures most of the people to him is his militia group is supposedly helping local law enforcement stop sex trafficking. So he's even got a
501c3.
So he's got a fake nonprofit going, and to help these people. So he's got other charges where people were donating shit to him, and then he was just keeping the money.
Yeah, it was a fraud charge.
It was a fraud charge that he got after we got arrested. But so that's what we thought we were dealing with, was guys like, hey, we're family, man. We've got kids, so anytime that we can go beat up some pedophiles, we're game. So it's like,
lure me into a car ride.
that's basically how they got us lured in. So Steve actually invited Bill to a training at his home, or so we thought it was his home. Later in Cambria, Wisconsin. So we were going to go on vacation anyway. We always go on vacation up in UP, and it was like an hour drive away from where we were going with
Well, it was
our
actually
family.
2.5 hours.
But
Yeah.
it was a short drive for us, so we went to this the first training in Cambria, and it was a family. I don't care what they say. There was 70, 80 people there. There's tents there. There's women and children, kids playing in the pool. They're having a cookout, and then they're doing firearms drills that Steve is in charge of, and Dan Chappell. So this is the first time that I meet these guys, and so we go there, and I can't train because I injured my foot. I can barely walk, but I'm there. So Bill does some training, and they're taking video of everybody so they can paint this thing. But there's no crazy talk while we're there, So we're there for 4 or 5 hours, and then we leave. That was it. So that was that portion of why we got arrested is because
Now I'm gonna interject here real quick, because one of the other things that I want to accomplish during this interview, aside from sharing your story, is make no mistake, you guys. The FBI didn't do this plot to kidnap. The FBI didn't do January 6th, and they're like, we're done. They are still doing this right now.
Oh, absolutely.
And I want every, listener to this show that may be, part of something through good intentions to listen to the details that these gentlemen are sharing. So you can pick up on things that make you go, have I recognized this here? Because chances are, you're probably seeing red flags, that are, an FBI agent. And if I'm a constitutional absolutist, so there's no asterisks to the First Amendment or the Second Amendment. So I believe in the right to the bear arms 100%, that there's zero restrictions there or freedom of speech. So if you're going to go and have a day where you're doing some range shooting or some drills, preparing for the zombie apocalypse, whatever the case may be, I think you have a 200% right to do it.
Yeah.
However, given the nature of our Department of Justice right now, if you're at events like that with people you don't know and people are adamant on recording, you may want to question why. I'm not saying it's an absolute. Some people like to record stuff to put on social media. It's cool. It's hype.
Yeah.
But you just have to be cognizant right now. Somebody may want to use that video later to say that you are some insurrectionist. So please continue, Mike.
Yeah. So I'll have to come back to that because once we get into trial, but that's what they had nothing on me. And when we continued it, our story is pretty short. It's actually longer for corruption than our involvement in the case. So,
well, it comes down to like you're invited by a group to go to have a discussion about the violence that's going on in your streets in 2020. You're invited to a training by the FBI, and then we were only there for 4 hours max. We left. It was myself, my brother, and my son, and a friend of mine. We left. We went to a restaurant. There's no restrictions. And I made a post on Facebook. It's like we stepped back in time into 2019 because Wisconsin didn't have any of them lockdowns.
Well, at the time we were there.
So when we go into a restaurant, nobody's wearing face masks. There's no social distancing. We're eating inside. I made a post. It went like completely viral. These people are like, what the hell's going on? To a couple months later, I haven't even talked to these guys. We get another invite to another training.
So we went in June, we went the very beginning of July.
Let me interrupt one more time.
Mm-hmm.
So, Bill, on your social media, had you had other posts before that ever go viral?
No.
Well, yeah.
What? Our militia page. Like on Facebook, I think you're allowed like 5,000 followers at the time, right? On our online page. When the lockdowns happened, our militia page blew up. It was actually banned and taken down once before in like 2019. There was a big push for like Sharia law here in Michigan. And we were asked to work security there, and we went on this big march, and it was about anti-Sharia law shit here, and there was actually a trans person showed up and to talk to us, and they didn't want Sharia law there because they're gay and they also were trans, and they were like, if Sharia law happened here, these people would kill me. Well, that went viral. The fact that they had Queers Against Islamophobia, and then you have this actual trans person talking to me.
We were live streaming.
And we were live streaming it. We had over 100,000 views in about 2 hours. But by the time we went to bed, we were pushing 1 million views on our original MLM page, and they took the page down. And it was because of that conversation.
And the reason I asked you that too, Bill, is, we've since learned, at least from, Twitter, or, X, formerly Twitter, we learned about the Twitter files, where we see that, our government had this backdoor access, to Twitter to make certain requests. And everybody focuses on just the deplatforming and censorship of Twitter. But I can't get anybody to ask questions on also the amplification.
Yeah.
And, if our government is looking to paint militias in a bad light, well, first you got to get militias' attention. And so part of me wonders if there's this artificial push, not that people aren't patriotic, because they are, but the FBI can be like, hey, there's this militia, group on Facebook. Make sure the algorithms, they're at the top of this all the time to get traction and eyes on this. So, that's the reason I asked, to see if this was something that, is pretty consistent. You always go viral, or
it could have been.
Is it something where?
Well, and then when the lockdowns happened, April 15th, when the gridlock happened, our militia, we had went around, talked to everybody else to come out on the lawn and be like, stand your ground, don't listen to these people, be peaceful. And they did. Everybody was peaceful on the lawn. There was a picture that was taken that was me. Mike didn't want his picture taken, so he wasn't in the picture, but there's like 200 people on the step, and it's me and a couple other militia leaders on the step. This picture, that went viral as well. We got a picture sent to us from China
And Russia.
There was actually, we were front page news there, and it was sent to our militia page. So the government knew exactly who we were. Before that, when the FBI gave us a good report in like 2018, our group had never went viral, and then we're leading protests, and we're just standing our ground, doing everything legal. And then we start going viral, and people knew exactly who our group was. The FBI assumed that we were like 20,000 people by the way they reacted, and there was like 12 of us that were actually active, and we just stood our ground and stood up for the people.
So you create backbones that way. You show up, and people and it's contagious. It really is.
Absolutely. And for those that are watching, that are like, they always hear this term militia around, and everybody pictures like, a platoon of army people, with guns and everything. And I know that's probably a whole other conversation and show, but just from your guys' perspective, what is a militia, or what is a militia to you guys, or at least what was the intentions of the militia you guys had?
Our intention is to stand up for the people, and that everyone is a part of the militia. In our Constitution, you have a right to be a militia. Anyone ages 17 to 45 is what it used to be. I think they expanded to 55, but you are the militia. You are to stand your ground, to help your community. We did homeless outreach. There was so many things. We were community orientated, and we thought the government was overstepping their bounds. And not only government, but when, again, you can look into BLM and who funded that and who orchestrated that. I'm sure it could get a lot deeper, but when you have groups burning down cities, it is your right as the people to stand and protect your community. That was what militia was to us. We, yet to this day, I have broken no laws. I've gotten a few speeding tickets or you know what I mean? Nothing criminal. I've never been, nothing we've ever done was illegal or with malice to hurt or harm anyone. We always stood for people. I think that's why the news, they picked up on it. Me and Mike are both big guys. I'm 6'2", I'm 270 pounds. Mike's 6 foot damn near, and he's a big guy. We carry guns, but we were always cordial with law enforcement. I'm not a big fan of law enforcement. I think a lot of our laws that are enforced are unconstitutional. But I've always showed them respect. You have to have law enforcement, otherwise you have complete anarchy. What law enforcement does, I will question law enforcement all day long. I'll question guys like Trump, and I'm going to vote for him. But if you do something unconstitutional, it is my duty to speak out against it. It doesn't matter if you're my party of choice. That's what our group did. We always stood for the people. It didn't matter what your affiliation was. We went to Black Lives Matter protests where they weren't being violent, and we went there and we protected some of them people for to voice their opinion. In our state, there was quite a few times where law enforcement overstepped their bounds. We went to one event. They had it wasn't Black Lives Matter. It was Justice for Black Lives. It was a small group. They asked us to show up there. We showed up there. We stood with them people. Law enforcement, they had 4 kids. They said matched the description of somebody who had robbed a convenience store. These were actually 12-year-old kids. They happened to be black, and they got held at gunpoint for an hour, whatever it was, and then they found out that these weren't even the people they were looking for, and they wouldn't even address an apology to the children that they had put through.
That's all the family wanted.
And that's
was an
the
apology.
family didn't want money. They just want an apology from law enforcement for, they found these 4 kids and they had to meet the description. We went there and we stood with them. The media knew who we were at this time because this was in 2020 as well. They heard me talking to black people. I have nothing, I can't say what a black person lives through, but a black person can't say what I've lived through. So we were educating ourselves because we're totally different sides of the political spectrum. We had a great conversation. I think that's what the world needs is more conversation. Poor black folk, poor white folk, poor Mexican people, we all have a lot more in common than what the government has with us. They constantly try to divide us to conquer us.
Well, hold on. I got to pump the brakes here, Bill, because, I'm seeing a huge red flag in the story here. You guys were over there hanging out with black people, but the media told me that you guys are domestic terrorist white supremacists. What?
So the thing is long story short, Bill's telling you one of the local stations actually would show up and they would just record us, but they weren't having their full cameras. It was like undercover stuff, and they recording us and all of our interactions with people. And then they did a segment on our group in late June, Wood TV 8, Jacqueline Francis did an interview with us, and they started showing all the stuff that we were doing, stopping violence. This is before we got invited to a training. So Dana Nessel, the Attorney General, had that taken down, and then they spun it to make us look like bad people after I think we were supposed to be caught up in this plot, and I think they couldn't get us to that point. So that's why we started getting invited to certain things.
Well, yeah, even at the Justice for Black Lives protest, the media knew exactly who I was. I had my militia shit on and my MLM patch on. They blurred out my face and my patch, and they were like, "This is what the community needs," but they wouldn't show my face. And everything else, I was the only one edited in the whole video, and it went on News 8 as well.
Mm-hmm. I'm seeing some staunch similarities between what you guys have gone through and what I've gone through. And one thing for sure is it doesn't sound like the FBI did their homework as thoroughly as they should have on you guys. But once and once you start an investigation and you commit characters to that investigation, now you're stuck with what you have. And in your guys' situation, they're like, well, damn, all this stuff is, what in court terminology, very prejudicial, but in your favor. Not in theirs. So all of a sudden you see the censorship, you see the blurring. Why? Because they know where this is going. They know what their intentions are. And, just like in my story, they thought they knew the narrative, and had they just done a little homework, they would have been like, oh, let's not target this one. This one's not the one. Mm-hmm. But they did it, and they made these mistakes. So at what point do you guys realize, shit, they're arresting us? Like what happened?
October 7th.
Well, so what happened is we got invited to a training in September. So the first one we went to was in July. Second one was in September. So we get invited to this training, and they set up this training course. And the first day was same as before. The problem is we got asked to go for a car ride, and we didn't know what they were up to. So we spend, an FBI agent drives us around a town while other 2 cars are doing something. We don't know what they're doing. So after we get back from that, we knew it was time to go, basically. The next morning we wake up and it was kind of back to normal again. So we were gonna like stick around because it was a 2-day training. We had kids with us and stuff. So they start doing this thing. Well, then all of a sudden we hear Steve Robeson calling our names. He wants us to come down and visit with him, and he's an FBI informant again. Well, Jenny Plunk come up and got us. He's another FBI informant. And they bring us down to this circle of trust meeting or whatever the FBI painted it as. And they didn't play the audio in our trial because the FBI was trying to sell FBI informants bombs at this meeting. So we're like, okay, it's time to go. So we just literally, after this meeting's over with, me and my brother are just looking at each other like, what the fuck is going on? So as soon as they're done, we go up, we get our kids, pack our shit, we leave. And that's our whole interaction with this whole group, is that whole thing. And incidentally, the guy, another FBI agent, Tim Bates, his name is Red, the same time,
AKA, right?
okay,
Yeah.
so the same time that he took everybody for this car rides, or they were part of this, in Idaho or Colorado, I'm foggy on the details of that. So he actually took a BLM activist and they tried to get him into a plot to kill the attorney general in that state. Same FBI agents, undercover actual agents. So they were trying to commit all this stuff to make it a one wild 2020. So
So
yeah, go ahead.
so to understand this correct, they get you guys in a car,
Yep,
and just take you for a drive around town.
around
I mean,
in Whitmer's hometown. So the FBI they already had this set up, and you got Christina coming on. She'll be able to explain it a whole lot better. She knows. But anybody that was invited to the Luther thing was supposed to be arrested just by showing up. They had poll cameras set up at all over places so they could get a video of it, right? So they know what's going on.
Yeah, that's where I was going with it. I was like, it sounds like they were trying to do something where they could get geotags on you guys, or get, visual, from surveillance cameras, intersection cameras, to be like, look, they were running surveillance in this plot.
That's what they tried to say. We were running surveillance. The problem is it was the FBI agent's truck, the FBI agent driving it. And then
there was no conversation in the car about what we're doing.
They had him mic'd up, and they did not play audio of our car ride because he was like, hey, let's go down Whitmer's Road. And I'm basically sleeping in the back seat because at this point I've already just kind of like shut it all out, like what's going on. But Bill's like, no, we don't need to go down there. So they couldn't play that in court because obviously we're not willing participants in this thing. So, and then they didn't play the circle of trust in court, but they made it a big stink in court saying, oh, they were there, blah, blah, blah. Well, the reason they didn't, because supposedly somehow the FBI agents didn't know who was an undercover and vice versa. So I think that's all bullshit, to be honest.
Well, yeah, because the only ones in that conversation that were willing to get anything from the FBI were the FBI informants. So they didn't play, even in our case, they would not play that circle of trust. They would not play a car ride, because if they played the car ride, they would see that we had no intentions of anything. We didn't know where we're going. It's in the audio. I don't know where the hell we're going when they start talking about this. And we end up going for a car ride, and we never do anything illegal in any of this. And it's still that the government had multiple times that they could have just dropped these charges, but they were vested already. They had to play it out. And like I said, it gets wild from there. I mean, just everything does. But
well, I'll interject here first to what Mike said. So and I want to make sure I understand right before I comment on it. So the FBI is saying that they didn't know who the informants were in that circle of trust.
Yes, and the FBI informants were supposedly not knowing who the other FBI informants are. So supposedly these guys don't know who each other are.
Jenny Plunk's the FBI informant, Jenny Plunk, who is the supposed Tennessee chapter commander of the 3% Patriot Militia, which is under Steve Robeson, because he is now the national commander of the 3% Patriot. She ended up calling her handler and saying, there's somebody here talking about selling bombs. That was the FBI selling bombs.
So she got scared because they didn't know who the FBI was, and vice versa. Supposedly, that's how it come out in trial. So,
well, this is what I'll say to that. So, do informants always necessarily know who other informants are? No. So that possibility there. Now, with regards to the FBI, and I speak on, authority here because I've actually been certified in an informant management course, and most detectives and agents that are going to be utilizing informants, you have to go through some type of formal training and certification because there's so much liability that comes with that. In addition to that, and we kind of talked about this before the show, is you have these central intel hubs for your municipalities and your sheriff's departments. Like here on the West Coast, we have what's known as LA Clear. And the purpose of this thing is so, when I'm a detective and I'm working on this, John Smith at location A, that's requiring, maybe some gang stuff, some narcotic stuff, where we know undercover work usually takes you to. Then I report this to LA Clear into a confidential classified database that says, hey, I'm working this location, and here's my contact info. So in the event another agency or, cop or detective happens to have an investigation that leads them to that same person, John Smith, or that same location A, when they call it into LA Clear immediately gets flagged saying there are two agencies here looking at either the same person or the same house. So in order to prevent blue on blue, where an undercover shoots another undercover, which we've seen in the past, that was allegedly the reason all these things were developed. This person at this intel hub contacts this detective and says, hey, there's another detective that also has an investigation going into either that property or that person, because they don't know the details. And then they form the branch so we can communicate with each other to say, hey, this is what's going on or that's going on. This is commonplace in investigations and detectives. This is not like, only the elite know about it. If you're a detective or something, about this and this is coast to coast in our country. There's no way the feds were doing an active investigation, taking you guys or their informants to locations that were not being documented in an intel hub that didn't let other investigators know exactly what was going on. Bullshit.
Yeah.
Now, in the last 15 years, that has not been the way law enforcement operates at the bottom level of, street cops to the upper echelons of the federal government. Like, I just want people to understand it is impossible for the FBI to say that they did not know who the informants was. You cannot believe that. Like I said, I'll give some leeway on informants may not know other ones. That possible, yes. Outside of that, not a chance that I'm ever going to subscribe to that, knowing what I know and what I've actually worked on my own. And I'll give it back to you guys.
Well, it was after that. I guess we should go to the day of the arrest when we got arrested. We had some money saved up. We're self-employed. We're contractors. We were both going to buy new trucks. We found one on Marketplace. It would happen to be in Lansing, Michigan. So me and Mike, after we cut out a roofing job that we were doing, we went to Lansing to buy a truck. We went there and we bought a truck. We were on our way home.
Well, while we were in Lansing, it was crazy because my wife was with us, and she's looking around, and there is state police all around us at all times. It's like a mass shooting just happened. Like everywhere you look, you just see cop cars, and they're not moving; they're just there. But we're so we're not criminals, so it's like I just noticed, she noticed them before I did. And I'm like, okay, whatever. Well, then on the ride home, we kept seeing cops still. And then I get a phone call from my buddy. He's like, hey man, news is saying that you guys got arrested, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, what? Like, no, man, I'm driving down the road right now. I was like, we're almost home. And he's like, all right, I was just making sure we were still solid. Next thing I know, there's a cop, like, out of nowhere, right up on my ass, follows me all the way through town, or on the back road. We're, like, in the country. Then we get to the Orangeville gas station, and then Bill has to get gas, so he pulls in with a new truck, hits the gas station, and they hit me. They pull me over, and then it was all hell broke loose. They're jumping out, AR-15, screaming like we just murdered somebody, and I have no idea what's going on. So finally, they asked me to take the keys out and throw them on the ground, so I do, and then they order me out of the car. They're threatening to kill me, like, immediately. So I'm like, what the hell? And because I have a CPL, I got my gun on me, but I'm not doing anything dumb. I'm not trying to touch anything. I'm trying to comply, but they're amped. Well, so they get me arrested, and then they see Bill, and they run over and get him. So,
well, yeah, and I open carry everywhere I'm going. I was fueling up my truck. They never tell us what is going on. I keep asking them, I'm complying. They get me in handcuffs. They take my gun off me, blah, blah, blah. They got this one little guy. He's a little punk bitch is what I'm going to call him, because he is. He's a punk bitch. He's a coward. He's jumping around, threatening to kill everybody. He's amped up. And I'm like, what is going on? They were like, you're a terrorist, is all he tells me. They never read me Miranda rights. They never tell me why I'm being arrested. They get us in a car. They take me and Mike to the casino down the road, because it's federal land, to try to interrogate us. So this is happening. They come to our house. Mind you, we're the terrorists, and we're already under arrest. They went to my house first. I think they probably hit his house at the same time. My father left where we were being arrested at the gas station, went and told my wife that the FBI is coming here, because that little piece of shit Howard, he's bragging to him that I'm coming to his house next, and we're going through his house. And he's all, like I said, he's a punk bitch. But they get here. That's when the Allegan County Sheriff's Department came into Berry County and assisted the FBI and the other three-letter agency, the MSP, to do a raid on our house without noticing or notifying the sheriff of Berry County that they're doing this, which is Sheriff Darley. They threatened to murder my wife because she had her cell phone in her hand. She came out, dropped the phone, or we're putting you down, is what they told her. She dropped her phone. She's trying to comply. My father is 69, 70 years old at the time of the arrest. He's hard of hearing. He's trying to comply with their orders. They tell him, turn around. So he turned around. They were like, walk to us. He turned around to walk to them. He's not understanding their direction. That gutless fuck yells, I'm going to put you down like a dog if you do not do as you're told. They threatened to murder my father as well. These people are cowards. You already have your threat. You already done this. After everybody's in the cars, they've got all the people detained. They take an MRAP and drive it through the side of my house through the slider door. They go through my house. They ransack it. The wife's got a wine fridge in here. They just tipped it over, shattered the face. I mean, they just did malicious shit to my house. Then, and I'll let Mike tell the story about his, but they held my family hostage for 4 hours, handcuffed, in the cop cars, minors. Both my boys, one was 13 at the time and one was only 16 at the time. When the family came down there to say, we want the minor children, they shouldn't be going through this, they said there is no minor children here. So they've lied. They've held them, they held him hostage in a car. My son at 13 years old, he was 6'3". He's like 400 pounds. They got him handcuffed in a car for fucking 4 hours. I have no respect for any of these people, especially when The FBI coordinated everything. They funded the operation. They planned evidence. They've done everything they could possibly do. Now, granted, the other groups may not know what's going on, but you know when you're an Allegan County Sheriff's deputy, why are you going into Berry County if the Sheriff's Department doesn't know? And
And we talked a little bit about that part before the show. I was giving these gentlemen, my opinion on that, because I was like, wait, I want to understand this, because I'll give law enforcement some leeway, because I know, but when they're explaining to me that they live in your guys' county, which is your guys' county is
I'm actually Berry County, which is
Berry
Sheriff Darleaf is from Berry County. He's in Allegan County. I understood why the Allegan County Sheriff might be at Mike's house, but Berry County, granted, I'm close to the line, but they knowingly came in here and did not tell the Sheriff of Berry County what they were.
And that's where I was going with this. It's not rational to always have these different, arrest warrants and search warrants, different counties. Is it technically possible? Technically, but it's one of those things where then you look at, was it common practice? And I guarantee you're not going to find that it's common practice. It's probably super rare. But on top of that, at a minimum, you're going to notify that agency that you're coming into their jurisdiction to enforce some aspect of the law.
Well,
there's so many there's safety reasons for that. There's liability reasons for that, because what if that department has something planned? What if they have a raid planned in that area? What if they have an undercover working in that area? Something where, the presence of law enforcement can compromise somebody. It's one of these things why you do these notifications. And I understand, because I was even explaining to Bill and Mike sometimes too, when you don't know that other agency and you don't know if they're good or they're bad, even in that situation, you're still going to do a notification. Granted, very last minute, but you're still going to do a notification because it's safety, and that did not happen here. And I highlight these points just so people can start to notice all these things that are just inconsistent with the way law enforcement typically operates. But I'll give it back to you guys.
Well, and then besides that, Mike should tell his story about the arrest that happened or what they put his daughter through.
Well, yeah, and I'll try to be cool with it. It really upsets me. So they have me arrested. They have my wife detained, and they tell us that they're going to our house next. So they hadn't actually been to our house yet. And I tell them, my daughter's home alone. She's 13. My wife tells them, my daughter's home alone. She's 13. So these pieces of shit, they go and they have me arrested. So there is no threat. They know that she's home alone. So they go to my house with an MRAP, and they run over one of my cars, blow through and just destroy the whole door right off the hinges with this MRAP. And they send a drone in after my kid. So after so many time goes wrong, she's trying to call us. She cannot get a hold of us. They won't let my wife call her. So they finally coax her out of the house. She's got her cell phone in her hand. She goes to put it in her pocket, and they goddamn near kill her on my front porch. I've never committed a crime, ever. I have had a CPL for 20 years before this. All right. So that's just, inexcusable. There is a line of cowardice that you shouldn't cross. And if a 13-year-old girl scares you enough, you should probably find another career path.
Let me jump in here real quick, Mike. So the time of day when all this is happening to you guys, or specifically in your situation right now, Mike, you're arrested, they're going to your house. What time is it right now?
It was dusk. It was starting to get dark. It was dark, but they had spotlights. They got drones. They could see that she was just a little girl.
Well,
but this is not like but this is not like 3 a.m, 4 a.m,
nope.
Like a 0 Dark 30 raid. Like this is later afternoon, early evening is when this is happening.
At night, yep.
So I'm going to share some things. Now, granted, this is speculation on my half, but it's educated speculation because Through informant management undercover work, I'm also certified in surveillance, mobile, foot, different things like that. So I have a position, a place to speak from, or what someone would say authority. I just hate the way that sounds sometimes.
Right.
But it's to me, it's just common sense from my career of what I know. Now, the ones making this arrest, is it the sheriff's department, the FBI department, or is this like a joint operation
SWAT
between the two?
team, it was SWAT team and
Allegan County
FBI.
Sheriff's Department, State Police, and the FBI working together for these arrests.
Now, for those of us that aren't familiar with Michigan, are we talking about some podunk county where it's like a population of 2,000 people?
No,
Or these areas?
Allegan's pretty big.
So we're talking a huge population of people. So we're talking a huge sheriff's department.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Allegan's way bigger than Berry County. Berry County, there's like 30,000 people in Berry County. Allegan's got to be double that.
So, and the reason I share that is because a lot of law enforcement watches my show, and which I appreciate, because it means they want to hear the other side of the coin. But one of the things is, when you get these larger agencies, with larger agencies comes the threat of liability, which is why you get so much training. And if you have a SWAT team, I guarantee you that there's been an overwhelming amount of training that's similar to what I've had. And when you're presented, if I'm these guys and I'm the lead detective, and I'm told, hey, we have a plot to kidnap and maybe even murder the governor of your state, yeah, okay, the threshold, the priority level rises to the top, which means I'm dotting every I and crossing every T, and I'm going to deploy the best investigation I've ever done. There's no doubt in my mind that that's how they should have approached this, which means when we're finally going to do the takedown, which is where we're at in this story, this is the takedown of you guys. There's a strong likelihood the reason you kept seeing cops is because they're doing, not a hidden surveillance, but they're doing something to always keep eyes on you guys. And there was one question I was going to ask you earlier, and you reminded me, and this is no offense to your friend or the person that made the call, but is this something I have to ask based off my training, is when you got that phone call, was it a friend or a family member that says, hey, I'm hearing you guys got arrested?
Well, see, it was our friend that started the group with us. And the thing is what we just found out about a month ago, is the radio chatter that these people were first reported is that me and Bill were in Jackson with the Watchmen, and there was a shootout, and we fled the scene. So we kind of wonder if that's why everybody was so amped up. Like, we already had a gunfight with Jackson or whatever. And it's like, I've never heard that. And it's been 3 years. And we just, Redax told us, a month ago, like, this is what the initial reporting was when you guys got arrested. It's like,
so. And the reason I ask you that question is because, like I said, I don't know the person that made that call, but one of the things that came to mind was this is also could be, what some people call it a tickle call, where it's to get you guys information to make you respond a certain way, and let's just say this friend's compromised, or maybe he was an informant, family or whatever, and then you hear this information, hey, we're going to be arrested. And then everything all of a sudden surface. We've been seeing a lot of police cars. Something like that can stimulate you guys into being like, man, we got to get out of here. You start making calls to someone. It's how we kind of get the wire active. When we're because I guarantee you they had a wire on you guys. This is kind of how you get that information. So we see who you guys are going to call, so we know who we got to get search warrants on and do follow up with. But it also, if you're going to flee, that kind of information is probably the information that's going to make you flee, which it will support their case. But when it doesn't happen, then the takedown takes place, at a gas station in your guys' situation. But if that's all happening, then there's no doubt in my mind that they also had active surveillance on your guys' homes already. Yep. So they knew you weren't home. And they knew who was there.
Yeah.
Yeah. When we hit this, so if you're new to this channel and you've never heard me talk on the tactics of these operations, when we hit a house, we know everything about that house as much as you can know. We're looking at the property receipts we have. If you've done modifications to that home, we know where the bedrooms are. We've already gone to covert locations where we lay out tape that's the exact measurements of this home or close to it, and we're doing dry runs, going to this one, going to this one. So by the time we finally hit a house, it's already kind of routine for us. We've gone through this. Like that's how much goes into this. Now, if you're talking about an operation into the alleged suspects that are going to kidnap and maybe even kill a governor, this is a minimum of what I'm describing of what's going to go into place. And I say all that to say this: there's no way they didn't know who was present at Mike's house. There's no way they didn't know that it was just his 13-year-old daughter. There's no way. And there's a thing that we can do where if the suspects are still out of custody, the scenario is different. But in this scenario, Mike and Bill, they're arrested. Your main targets are in custody. So that being said, now you can make a phone call into the house. I, as a detective, can be like, look, we already have your house surrounded. We already have the water shut down to your house. So if you have narcotics there, no one there is going to be able to get rid of it. We even have catches that we put in your plumbing. Like, your home's surrounded. But for the sake of the safety of your daughter, I'm going to put you on speaker, let your daughter know there's something going on with law enforcement, and that law enforcement's around the house, and that she just needs to step out with their hands up, nothing in her hands, so that we can go in and we're going to search the house. Like, that's how it should have unfolded.
I believe so.
You don't ram that house, because here's the thing. At 13 years old, maybe this is a pro-Second Amendment family. And all of a sudden something comes crashing through your house. I'm sorry, if you're a good person, if you're a law-abiding family, you're not thinking, oh, that's the cops.
Mhm.
You're thinking, holy smokes, what's going on? Your natural reaction, especially if you have a dad or a mom that's pro-Second Amendment, is probably going to go try to get that gun that they have to protect the home and yourself. And then all of a sudden, these operators are coming through. The lights are bright. I've been on both sides of, training before, but now I've also been, on the suspect side of this. When those bright lights that we have, and we have them bright for a reason, we don't want suspects to see what we're doing.
Yeah,
Which also means if we don't identify ourselves, people don't know who we are, which can create the scenario for something awful to happen. And in this case, I mean, they really amplified the risk to probably shooting, and if not disabling, killing your daughter
Mhm.
in this. And to make it full circle, as we continue the circle, remember, Mike and Bill don't know what's going on. The rest of the world doesn't know what's going on. The FBI did.
Mhm.
They know who's been coordinating this. They know who's been planning this. They know who the biggest threats are in this. None of this is a mystery to them, yet they still chose these tactics to put people in danger. And that is just absolutely distasteful and disgraceful from the eyes of someone who wore the badge for a good portion of my life. And I'll give it back to you, Mike.
Well, and to bring up that point, we've known of Darley for a very long time. So everybody knows. We had pictures. We would be working security at rallies, and he would show up and be a guest speaker at some of these things. So there's several pictures of Bill and Darley standing next to each other. They know that we know the sheriff. Why didn't they just contact Dar? Well, I know why, because they wanted him to be out of office. But so they could have contacted him, and he could have called, and we'd have gave ourselves up. And no, there would have been no harm to nobody, because we knew we never committed a crime. But the FBI, I personally believe they wanted to kill us. I do, because they know they didn't have a case because they refused to prosecute us federally. So to tell people that we already had a shootout with cops already before this and get everybody that amped up, I feel like they were, I think we were supposed to be sitting here, so to get beyond that, because it really bugs me. We got arrested. They took us to an interrogation on federal land.
the Firekeepers Casino.
I lawyered up 3 or 4 times. Like, they would not tell me why. And then finally, I was like, all right, I'll talk with you, but you got to tell me what's going on. So then finally, I agreed to talk to them.
Now, for the record, I hate to interrupt, Mike, but man, you're bringing up some points. In good conscience, I just can't ignore them.
Mm-hmm.
Someone lawyers up, we are done.
Supposed to be.
Like you ask any prosecutor that, if because you have good working relationships with your prosecutors, right? And if I tell a prosecutor, or he tells me, this is a great statement, do we have any Miranda concerns here? I'm gonna be like, no, we made the arrest, brought him in the interview, we did Miranda. And for those that don't know, there's two things when it comes to Miranda. There's direct consent and there's implied consent. If I read you your Miranda rights, it's not always like the way the movie says, I read you your rights and then I say, do you want to talk to me? Although sometimes we do say that. Sometimes we'll read you your rights and then we'll go straight into the questioning. And if you talk with us, that's considered implied consent. I just did a solid for all the defense attorneys out there with future clients. You never talk to the law enforcement, period. Okay.
No,
I love the badge. I back the badge, but I will say you never talk to law enforcement because good cops are always going to get what they need. And people say, Alpha, why do you say that? I say that because good cops are going to do good investigations where we don't even need statements from the suspects and we're going to have a solid case. The only people that absolutely rely on the statements of suspects and witnesses, or mostly suspects, are people that probably aren't great investigators and they just want someone to do their work for them. And most of the time there's going to be something that moves that statement. But if someone lawyers up once, case is done. Lawyers up twice, case is most definitely done. 3 and 4 times, like you're saying, Mike, like there's just no way in humanity I'm going to see a defense attorney saying this is coercion. Like, of course my client finally talked. He's being held, arrested, captive, hostage, whatever, colorful language he wants to use. He wants to know what's going on. Nobody's telling him. So of course he submitted, because how else is he going to figure out what's going on? Is it going to be another 4 hours, 6 hours, 2 days? Like 100% coercion. And the reason I share these things is because I'm trying to expose. I've made some great friends from former FBI agents, talking about, Kyle Seraphin and Gerald Boyle and Steve Friend and others. And it's good, but it's bad because those men are so smart and intellectually they're just dialed up here that we kind of think, well, then all the FBI is like that. No, they're not. They're not all like that. As a matter of fact, for them to take any statement from Mike after you've lawyered up 4 times shows me that these guys just suck when it comes to investigations. Like, they just don't know what they're doing. And did they ever explain why they took you to tribal land to do this? Because that's weird.
Well, our attorney said it's because it's federal land, and so if you lie, so that way the FBI could be there, even though they're not actually charging us. So the FBI and state police were in the room trying to interrogate me. So they wanted us to lie to the federal agent because at least then they could get a felony out of us. They already knew we didn't commit a crime. So that's what our attorneys figured, that this 302 is that, I think 302
is your statement.
Yeah, so that would be a felony because you lied to a federal agent. Yeah. But the only time they actually told me, I said, I'm not talking to you without my attorney, and then he just kept talking to me, and I was like, why am I here? So he brings me a sandwich, and he's trying to be my buddy and shit, and we're having small talk, but we're not talking about any issues, and then he's like, blah, 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 and trying to interrogate me again. I was like, I'm not talking to you. You won't even tell me why I'm here. And he's like, fine, I'll tell you why you're here. He's like, we're going to get this over with. He's like, you're being charged with providing material support for a terrorist act. You were planning to kidnap Gretchen Whitmer. I was like, I'm not talking to you. I was done. I shut up then, but it took 4 times. They still come in, but I just knew I wasn't talking to them. I had nothing to provide. I knew I didn't commit any crime, wasn't plotting anything. So, but then they had Bill at the same time in the same place.
Well, yeah, and then for everybody out there, it's rough because I'm the biggest stickler. You never talk to law enforcement. They are not your friends. You're in this thing. I already know what happens in these raids. I've seen multiple videos where they kick in the door. They don't tell you who they are. Somebody gets shot. They shoot your dog, and you just know. So my main concern is when they first started there, they read me my Miranda rights. I said, I want to talk to my family. I know you're going to my house. And I wanted to talk to them. So they started playing a game like, we'll let you have your phone. We'll let you call your family. I was more, I don't know, when you're in that position, you don't think about things. You're more worried about your family. So I have no idea what the fuck I'm there for, but I'm willing to speak with them. I want to talk to my wife and my children. So we start talking. I don't know what's going on. When they throw down this fucking thing in front of you with all these faces on there, I've seen a couple of these guys. I don't even know them by name. I don't know these people. The weirdest question they gave to me was, are we safe here? This is the FBI asking me that because I think these idiots thought because we had 5,000 followers on our MLM page that we had 5,000 people that were militia in our group that we were in command of. I'm taken back. I'm like, what are you talking about? Well, we don't want your people coming here and having an issue. And I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. And it's not even until after the interrogation's over that you even realize that they hinted that my guys were going to come and kill them. And I was oblivious to it. I just wanted to talk to my wife and kids, make sure they were okay. Because at that point in time, I didn't know that they were ransacking our house, held my children hostage. So I broke my own cardinal rule and I spoke to them. But I didn't know anything about the case. And I didn't know the people in the case. I didn't know anything of what was going on. So they were upset with me because I didn't give them any info. Well, I had no info to give anyway. Not that I would have, ratted out on anybody, but I seriously didn't know what was going on. I was oblivious to an actual plot. You hear the stuff that we heard at some of these things I've heard more offensive shit at a bar. You had a bunch of drunk people talking about overthrowing the government at the bar. That was more serious than what I've heard in any of these so-called meetings that we had. So I had nothing to provide to them. Not that I would have, but they still play on your emotions. You want to talk to your family? Let's have this conversation, and then you still never get your phone call. After that, they drive us 2.5 or 3 hours north. We don't even know where we're going. I got locked in solitary confinement at the Antrim County Jail. I never got a phone call, didn't get to talk to anybody. 24 hours later, they take me to Grand Traverse County, which Grand Traverse is a big county. It's basically a prison that they put you in. So it was about a day and a half or so before I ever even got to call my family and let them know where we were at. In the meantime, the lawyers that we have are because of Darleaf. My sister called Sheriff Darleaf, was like, hey, they're being arrested, blah, blah, blah. The dispatch had no idea what she was talking about. She gets a hold of Darleaf. Darleaf ends up telling them, call this lady, Catherine Henry. She's a constitutional lawyer. He gives a lawyer information. The case is too big for her, so she ends up reaching out to Tom Siver, and Tom Siver was Mike's lawyer. Tom Siver knew Damian Nunzio, which was my lawyer, and that's how we got our lawyers, because of Sheriff Darleaf. The day we were finally arraigned, it was over a Zoom. The government had already had court-appointed attorneys for Mike and I, even though we had retained our own lawyers. They had to fight to get them removed so they could sit in on the arraignment. There's speculation from what our lawyers said. Jennifer Ullman-Whitmer was our arraigning magistrate.
It's Gretchen Whitmer's sister-in-law.
Yeah,
I was about to say, there's a very familiar name there.
Mm-hmm. So what their actual connections are, one of our attorneys said that she was related. She was a sister-in-law. I don't know what it is, but it's Jennifer Ullman-Whitmer. She was our arraigning magistrate for a terrorist charge, and she's was she like a family court magistrate or something?
She was not a criminal, or that sort of.
So why she was in on that? Our bond was scheduled to be $1 million cash. So you can't have a bondsman, you can't do anything. Our lawyers had argued, got it down to $250,000 cash. You can't get out of jail. 2 months later, they finally got it down to a 10%. Our lawyers were cash assurity, so we were able to use a bondsman, but it still cost us $12,000. And my sister had to put up her house as collateral to get us out of jail. It was within a night or two of us actually getting home after 2 months. Our tethers went off at 3 o'clock in the morning. I think what the FBI wanted, they set our tethers off. I think they thought we were actually going to cut the fuckers off and run. We were the first people to be bonded out of jail when this happened. So at 3 o'clock in the morning, Mike calls me and he's like, dude, is your tether going off? And I was like, yes, it's going off. Our lawyers finally got a hold of the Antrim County. This was like Friday night going into Saturday. We finally got a hold of our tether lady. She says the Antrim County system was hacked. Everybody's tether was going off. I call bullshit. I believe it was probably only Mike and I, because again, 2 days after this, it says you're in violation. I'm sleeping in my bed next to my wife. I assume they wanted us to cut the tether and run, but again, why would you do that if you know you're innocent? You're gonna comply at this point in time. They've already got you. You're gonna do that. We then met with our lawyers, and after 2 months in jail, we get to go to them, meet them, talk to them. The first thing they say is that Greg Townsend, he was the attorney general in charge of our case. He said that if we would be able to implement Darleaf into this plot, we could potentially have our charges dropped, is what our lawyers
Hold. What?
Yep.
Yes.
So that's why we believe Allegan County went into Barrett County. We believe that's why they did not notify him, is because they were hoping we would just flip, because they did not do their research about who we are and who our family is. We're not rich people, but we're country. We hope that, we've got the greatest friends and family, anybody can ever have. People went to bat with us. And so when they figured,
I want to bring something up on the screen real quick. I'd mentioned it during the teaser to the show. Let me grab this real quick, just in case people join late. This is an affidavit that was sent to me, allegedly signed by Sheriff Darleaf. Haven't had the confirmation on that yet, but essentially what this affidavit's alluding to is that DJ Hilson's office sent Darleaf a subpoena because they're trying to get evidence that he has from the Dominion machines, surrounding election fraud or malfeasance from these machines during the time of election. So this is the same sheriff that you guys just heard.
Yeah.
Bill and Mike are saying that the FBI is telling you guys that if you can implicate this man.
It's actually Attorney General Dana Nessel.
That's the crazy thing about Greg Townsend. He's the Attorney General in charge. He's the one that offered this deal to our attorneys. We, of course, to tell you bluntly, I told my lawyer to suck my dick. There's no way I'm going to do that, right? And he said, I'm just going to tell him no. So
hold on, that rates one of these, man. Let me tell me I still have it somewhere.
Yeah. So, the long story about Greg Townsend is he's the Attorney General. Before we ever go to prelim or anything like that, he's the Attorney General in charge. It's like a law firm called, is it the Truth Seekers?
Something like that.
Something like that. They look into old cases.
What happened is he left an office where he was at to go to the Attorney General's office, and the new prosecutor found evidence and they turned it over to somebody, but he was withholding evidence on a man who'd been in prison for 16 years. He had 5 life sentences because he was accused and convicted of burning down a house with 5 children in it, and they died. So, but new evidence come about, and they had to release that guy. So that guy got terminated. So Greg Townsend got terminated from the case. That was before we even got a preliminary exam. And then the lead agent, Richard Trask, he's the guy that signed the arrest warrants and everything of the criminal complaint.
Yeah.
He got removed or suspended from the FBI because he beat his wife half to death after a swingers party. So this is the only people committing criminal activity is the people prosecuting us.
So just to recap, I want to make sure the audience heard this. You have Townsend, who was withholding evidence about a murder case from a guy that's in custody already.
Yeah, he spent 14 or 16 years in prison, and they had to release him.
Shit.
Yep.
He fled to Florida right after that. There's nothing ever been done to him that we know of. Then they had signed Sanita. She was our second prosecutor. It took over 2 years 2 years for us to get a preliminary exam to see if they would even bond it over for trial. The whole time we were on tether, we spent 9 months on house arrest, never got to go to court, never got to do anything. After our prelim, it was only bonded over due to like a technicality, but the FBI is the prosecuting attorneys too. They work with the attorney generals, but they run the case. They ran the prosecution, they ran everything. I think they get to the judges. I can't prove it, but these judges, they're in on it too. There is no way around it. They work together. He should have never bound Mike over. So even if they would have had grounds of anything that they could have possibly said, the jury's going to convict him. There's nothing. Mike never did anything. He didn't even know the people that invited us to this trainings. That was me, and I feel guilty because him being my twin brother is why he got charged. Simple as that.
First of all, to answer, they absolutely get to the judges. And once again, I've said this before, you can put me on a live stream polygraph and I will speak to this. The judge, the one that was hearing the motions, from when we're trying to quash the warrant, get the identity of the informant that all of a sudden doesn't exist anymore. The judge literally told my attorney in chambers, and my attorney has no reason to lie to me, told my attorney in chambers, I can't give you what your client wants because there's too much political pressure here.
Oh, yeah. And it's political.
What?
Yeah, it should not be that way. Yeah.
It's just, that's insane. And it's, first of all, I'm not asking you to give me what I want. I'm asking you to do your job.
Exactly. You have the right to face your accuser, and yet he disappeared.
100%. If you believe my case lacks probable cause, then you're obligated by your oath and the law to dismiss it. That's not what I want. That's what the law demands.
Yeah.
To see that this mentality exists to where people are not going to sacrifice their retirements, their pensions, their promise, for promotions. Because it's a funny deal that the DA that handled my case for the first 2.5 years or so all of a sudden gets promoted to judge. It's just interesting when you see these things unfold, because the FBI guy, and I don't remember his name, that was handling this, didn't he get promoted to an office in DC?
Yep.
With the J6 stuff?
Yep. Yeah, he was the same guy that in our April 3rd, well, we had talked about that before the show, but in April 30th, there was a rally in Michigan. The Wolverine Watchmen were there. Their commander of the Wolverine Watchmen is an FBI informant. He's a paid provocateur by the name of Dan Chappell. He's at the Capitol. Everybody decided they were going to go in. It was raining. The FBI, or he called his handling agent. They ended up calling the Capitol Police and said to let these people in. It's the right type of violence we need. So the FBI called the Capitol Police. Everybody that stormed the Capitol went in. They got their head scanned, seeing if they had a fever, whatever. They went inside. Everybody was peaceful. Yeah, they were chanting, free us, all this other shit. Everybody went home. That guy, D. Antonono, who's the lead of the Detroit field office, was promoted on like October 11th. We were arrested on October 7th. He was then promoted to Washington, D.C. So again, when they say January 6th was the April 30th was a test run for January 6th, the FBI absolutely did a test run. They were involved in January 6th. They can say whatever they want to. We watched videos live where we were on tether remodeling a kitchen in an apartment of the cops actually escorting people into the Capitol. They were live on TikTok. So we know that all of this is connected. They can say whatever they want. It's not a conspiracy. It's connected.
It absolutely is connected. I agree with you. Were there any highlights when the court process is taking place? Were there any statements that you heard on the stand or audio recordings that the FBI played? Was there anything significant that was played that you guys remember, or things that you want to highlight from like when the court process was taking place?
Yeah. First of all, like this was 14 guys in our court process, right? The very first trial, there were 6 guys in the federal court. Before the discovery was ever even handed out, they had one guy plead guilty. He got a sweetheart deal. Turns out we believe he was working with the FBI before the arrest. His lawyer was an FBI agent. He was a former employee of the FBI. I don't exactly know what his status was. So he gets a sweetheart deal. He supposedly got 2 years in prison for a conspiracy charge. Nobody can find out where he was ever housed. Don't think he was ever in jail. Then another man, he ended up pleading guilty because he was building ghost guns with Dan Chappell, the FBI informant. So they pressured him. They were going to charge him on the other shit. He ends up pleading guilty. He gets 4 years in prison. So now you only have 4 guys going to trial in the very first federal case. It was a hung jury on 2 of them, and 2 of them were acquitted. Brandon Caserta and Daniel Harris. They were both found not guilty due to entrapment. The other 2, it was a hung jury. No conviction. The second trial comes in. Judge Yonkers put a time limit on the questions for the defense. So if the FBI questions these people for 12 hours, you got 25 minutes or 45 minutes apiece to cross-examine this star witness. They're not allowed to have any conversation about the first trial. This jury cannot know that the first trial was a hung jury on these 2, and that there was actual people found not guilty due to entrapment. If that's when they burnt Steve Robeson. Before that, they said he was a double agent. No, he was the agent provocateur they needed to actually put all this together. He had guns on him every time I ever seen him. He's a multiple-time felon, and then it turns out he's a pedophile and a rapist, and the FBI's worked with him since '85. Ultimately, at the end of the first trial, after everything that they did to corrupt that trial, Judge Yonkers and that they find him guilty. They put Adam Fox in prison for 16 years. He's the ringleader. He's homeless and lived in the basement of a vacuum shack. He didn't even have running water there. I don't believe the guy is who they say they are. And then Barry, he was supposedly the spiritual leader, and they gave him 19 years in prison.
They're in the Supermax and Florence Supermax right now.
Yep.
None of them,
and none of them have ever been, they were not violent people. They did spout some rhetoric, and and again, the time was 2020. Our country was being burnt to the ground. And they took everything that anybody says out of context. Adam Fox had like 5 or 6 agents and informants around him at all times. Half his supposed militia, which the FBI gave him and told him, I want you to be the Michigan chapter commander of this. They then implemented FBI agents into his group.
And see, this is the part that still really frustrates me. And I know a lot of people aren't familiar with the law, and they're probably just frustrated with this just on the moral standard of it. And I understand that. But beyond the moral standard, from the legal standard, this frustrates me so much, because when in law enforcement, when we say a crime, well, what people don't know, or maybe a lot of people don't understand, is there's elements to every single crime that's in the penal code. Like every single crime has elements to it. And some of them are shalls, some of them are in conjunctions with other shalls, but every one of these elements has to check the box. In order for this crime to exist, this, and this must be present. And if it doesn't, then it's not a crime. It's just not. So in our Constitution, like I said, I'm a constitutional absolutist. We have the First Amendment. There's no asterisks next to it. Doesn't say the First Amendment, but no hate speech. Doesn't say the First Amendment, but no violent speech. Doesn't say that, everybody. It just says you have the right to say whatever you want, including redressing your government. So people can come out and say, legally, can say, you know what? F the government. I wish they all go to hell. Like, you can say that. Now, if you get it even more spicy and say something, and this is a hypothetical for the FBI that's listening, because I know the way you clowns act, come out there, well, the government needs to be taken down. That's still legal speech.
Yeah.
Now, if you want to pursue that as a terrorist threat, then there's other boxes that need to be met. Okay, you made that statement. Do you have the means to make that happen? And then another one, do you have the tools to make that happen? Is there other information that corroborates that this is something you're trying to turn into a tangible action? Like, there's all these things that need to take place. Just the fact, it's the reason Madonna got to say on TV, I should blow up the White House, and no one did shit about it. Why? Because she's protected by the First Amendment. Now, has she made that statement and they saw, she's building explosives in her house. She's reaching out. she's reaching out to domestic terrorists, not FBI informants reaching out to her. She's doing these things. Then all of a sudden you start to cross and get into the threshold of probable cause for these crimes. So when I hear that this guy, he said some things and they came after him for 19 years, it's such an abuse of the law in this country. And if our government is not careful with it, and I say this out of opinion only, FBI, if our government is not careful with that, you can push law-abiding citizens to a point where they're saying, but you're using the law to hurt me, and now all I can do is protect myself. And what we're seeing is they want to take people to the brink of that so they can start literally just picking off conservative after conservative after conservative to where this becomes a third world nation. And people need to understand it's why highlighting your story is so important, because a lot of us my audience, forgive me fellas, but my audience knows I yell at them from time to time. If we just think we can keep our head in the sand and say, well, this is in Michigan, Alpha Story's in California, I obey the law, I'm out here in the great state of Texas. At some point, that goalpost is going to get moved to where something that you are not going to waver on is something that the government is going to say, we're not okay with it. For some, it is not a far-fetched idea to think that the government will tell you one day, this is the only God you can worship. And if that goes against your religious beliefs, guess what? You're the new domestic terrorist. The problem is there's no one to stand and fight with you, because everyone else that they did it to in the past is arrested, dead, or whatever else case. I think it was Benjamin Franklin that made the statement. We either all hang together or we will most definitely hang independently.
Yeah, exactly.
And like I said, I don't advocate for violence because the Constitution outlines so many legal process to get to where we need to. Just people need to understand the power of we the people. The one thing that I learned in law enforcement, I'll give it back to you guys so we can start wrapping this up. But the one thing that I realized is I worked in a city, I think we're documented somewhere between like 70 and 80,000 people. However, we're a very highly undocumented city. So I would definitely add probably another 20 or 30,000 to that. But conservatively, we're about 80,000 people in this city. At any one time, and I always tell people, it shocks them, how many cops do you think, when people get mad at me, it took you 20 minutes to get here or an hour to get here? And I understand their frustration, but I would always tell them, how many cops do you think are working right now? Well, there's probably 25 of you guys. I said, no, there's one sergeant, 5 cops, and a dog. Like that. That's what we're using right now to protect this city. Like that's all. What are you talking? No, that's what you have. And, so-and-so's on an arrest. So-and-so went to a traffic accident. We got to keep someone patrolling the city in case there's an emergency. These things, they pile up. And I say that for people to understand, just like the government, law enforcement, we keep order through consent. Because if the populace decided, man, enough's enough, you could call every cop on your roster in any agency. You don't have enough to control that city. You just don't. So there has to be a mutual relationship between law enforcement and the community that understands we consent this authority to you, ultimately, even to the point of where you're taking someone's life, under the understanding that you respect that authority and understand that you're using that authority to protect us, not persecute us. And we're at a point in this nation right now where our Department of Justice, the FBI specifically, is using lawfare to punish Americans. And we're seeing, gentlemen like you, we haven't got to this part and I want to get there. We're seeing people that are being acquitted, being found not guilty, having cases dropped against them, but their life is destroyed. They go and try to apply for a local job, and that local job runs their name. The January 6th domestic terrorist, Michigan domestic terrorist. There's nothing in there that says, oh, you were acquitted. No, this person's 100%, law-abiding citizen. They did nothing wrong. You destroy their life. In addition to that, you have family members, the same way your sister-in-law had to take out a loan on their home. My mom had to take a loan out on her property to help us with a $250,000 bail on a single nonviolent weapon charge. Ridiculous. What kind of stress did that cause to her? My arrest was January 5th or January 20th of 2021. On November 3rd of 2021, my mom had a stroke.
Yeah.
She was healthy.
Yeah.
A healthy woman. But the stress had gone to her so much of wondering what's going to happen to her son. It gave her a stroke. Now she's recovered physically completely, but she doesn't speak right. She, who knows when she'll ever regain the ability to speak. It forced her into retirement. It forced all this. And guess what? My story ain't the only one that's like that. How many people have committed suicide because of lawfare?
Yeah.
How many divorces exist because of lawfare? How many people have lost custody of their children because of lawfare? So I hope people that are listening to this story that you guys have are understanding that this is not just your story, but this is proof, absolute proof of the weaponization of the government, your government, the American government, to persecute you if you don't want to get in line with their ideology. And that's not the republic that this is, little r republic.
Yeah.
Like that's why your guys' story needs to get out. It's why people need to digest it. And we need to stop pretending that everything's just going to be okay. If we don't do things to fix this country the legal way, FBI,
Yeah.
this country is not going to,
Exactly the legal way.
And so that's my next question to you guys. What has been the consequence of all this for you guys and your family?
Well, it brought, who your friends are and who's not. That's, a given. But we're lucky, man. I'm telling you, we wouldn't have got through it without our friends and family. There's no way. It brought us all closer together, so that backfired on them. Luckily for us, we're self-employed, and we lost a lot. Our residential
50 to 70% of our company's dead. I mean, we don't have any residential contact.
But the commercial guys, we got two groups of guys that keep us going on commercial work, and they've stuck with us through the whole thing. I can't say enough about that. So, but you're never innocent, even though we got acquitted. It's like you're guilty until proven otherwise in the court of law, and even after that, you're still guilty because they keep saying, "Oh, they didn't have enough evidence to get in a conviction." Well, they didn't have evidence against us. There was no evidence of a crime. They had to lie on all. The thing that helped us is the FBI got caught in a lie, fabricating evidence. And then the judge, instead of removing the agent from the stand like he should have, because he perjured himself, and he manufactured bogus evidence against the other guy that was on our on trial with us, the judge let him do a curative statement. Well, then they couldn't even corroborate all their stories. So when the next FBI agent gets on the stand, he lies. And then so forth. Every one of them that got on the stand lied. And this, where they tried us, was a small town community. And they already probably didn't like the FBI as it was, because it's a Republican county and it was Whitmer's hometown. So the FBI picked that jury, and now they're lying to him.
Well, it's just to expand on that. When you go into court, your first day, you pick they start to pick their jury. They got a panel. They pull in. It's like a lottery. They pull these numbers. They literally have this little lottery thing that they spin. They pull a name out. You come out of the crowd. Our defense attorneys, they get asked questions. The prosecution gets asked questions. What you don't see behind the scenes is there's like 20 FBI agents in the corner with their computers running these little programs, and they come out and tell the attorney general, "You got to get this guy off the jury." So the FBI picks your jury, right? So, and then the judges are in on it. You can kick a jury member off for just cause. They give the defense attorney, like my attorney got 5 to kick off just for cause. His attorney got 5, and then Eric Molitor, he was the other guy that was acquitted with us. His attorney gets 5 to make it.
Let me interrupt real quick, because I want the audience to understand what you said here about these agents in there with the laptops. What they're doing, because as a case agent, you're part of jury selection with the prosecutor, so I know what this is like. But it's usually just me and the prosecutor, maybe an assistant to the prosecutor, and you're going through these dual juries. So there are things that you're looking to. I mean, you are trying. It's not a secret. You are trying to form the best jury to present your argument to. That's not a secret.
Yeah.
But this is where that blank checkbook that the government has becomes so unfair, because your attorney doesn't have 20 pro Bill and Mike people there with laptops going through every one of these juries, because you know what the FBI was looking for? They were probably looking for who has a conservative digital footprint, who has a pro-Trump footprint, who are people that are very religious, because religious people typically are going to align with God's idea of you make sure you do justice. You remove motives. They're the FBI's guys they're looking for the people that are truthful, or probably going to lean to being truthful or lean towards being moral, to remove them from being on the jury panel, not to pick them, to remove them. Like, that's dirty. Like that is just wow.
Well, that was just the tip of it, because after the FBI helps select your jury, even the kicking off of the jury to find your selection, to make it fair, we got 15 between 3 parties. The prosecution gets 15. That judge mandated that my attorney goes first. He picks and he kicks. Mike's attorney then goes, and then Molitor's attorney then goes. So by the time they've already knocked out 3 of the jury, this guy still has 15 to kick. They set it up that way so that by the end of the jury, by the time you're done, he still has like 10 people to kick off the jury. You only have a jury of 12.
Well, we had
18 altogether, but he still gets the prosecution then gets to select the jury. Our attorneys were very smart, and they just kept passing and passing and passing until prosecution passed 2. Once both parties passed, they picked the jury. The prosecution still had like 5 or 6 people they could have kicked, but he passed. Then when you get into court, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm a conspiracy realist. I know when there's something going on. They start playing things. They didn't know the difference between me and Mike in court. I have tattoos all over. I've got tattoos on my arm. I got a big tattoo here. They released this training video that Steve Robeson was instructing. I'm sweating and the sun's shining, so in the recording, you can't tell I have tattoos. But, I mean, it's clear. I've got a big tattoo up on my arm and everything. I was sleeveless in that training video. They couldn't see the tattoos. They said it was Mike. That was the reason why they even got Mike bound over in the first place, because they don't know the difference between us. I tell my attorney, because I got Damian Nunzio and Christina Nunzio, that's the father and daughter. I lean over and I tell her, they're lying. That right there is me. That is not Mike. So when the FBI gets on the stand and they start putting this evidence forward, they keep correcting their mistakes. So I tell her, they've hacked your computer or they've bugged your hotel room. They're listening to us. They tell me, you're drinking, you're crazy, you need your tinfoil hat. And then we go to the hotel and we discuss certain things about the case. We keep telling them they're lying in this evidence. We had 280 pieces of evidence that was supposed to come into court. They threw out 40 of them because we caught them in lies. They threw it out before it was ever brought up in court. So then my attorney, Christina, she says, okay, now I'm starting to drink your Kool-Aid. They're somehow listening to us. So she put a VPN on her computer to where they couldn't hack into it. And then we went from they have an office in the hotel that we were using. We went from that to the basement. Suddenly they weren't correcting their lies anymore. So she was like, they've bugged something. So this case is going on. Molitor's lawyer caught that they had took a timestamp. Molitor didn't know what was going on. They invite him to go for a car ride. He doesn't know where they're going. Adam Fox had got him a security job working for security for, I think it was like Menards during all this. So when Adam is the one that got him the job, when he came up there, he shows Adam that he's got this RF detector. It was for their security line of work. He doesn't know anything about this Whitmer plot. They go on a ride. 4.5 hours later, they're on their way back. They finally explain to Eric what the hell they've been doing. Eric doesn't agree to this. But then in their files, they took the 4.5 hour discrepancy. He took where they explained to Eric what they were doing on the way back, and they put it this way so that they know as soon as he gets in the car, he knows what they're going up to do. And when they get back, he shows them the RF detector. They completely flipped it. So when the jury finds out about that, they know that these people are lying under oath and they're lying on the stand. We then, when we had transferred to the basement, they didn't know I was testifying, but you have to testify on your behalf when you're fighting with the FBI. If you're innocent, you have to testify. As I was testifying, They started recording. They had talked about the trainings that we went to. I'm telling my lawyers, I'm like, we didn't do some of these trainings that they're saying we're doing, for one. For two, the best way I could explain it was like a 3-gun competition. We shot 3-gun competitions, pistol competitions with law enforcement all the time. I'm explaining the targets. You got clay pigeons, you got shoot, no shoot targets, and then you have steel plates. The Attorney General said that I testified that there was no shoot targets in this in their shoot house that the FBI designed. I never testified to that. They took it out of the recording that they had of me talking in the basement. So the FBI, the whole time, they're recording you, they're bugging different places, and then they try to present their best case. But if they had a case, why are you recording it and then taking things again out of context to put into this case? We were found not guilty finally. The Attorney General went and she came out and bashed the jury for finding us not guilty, and it was because they were Republicans, she said. The FBI picked that jury. But she came right out and said that it was the jury's fault because they were Republican. So if they would have had a liberal jury, it wouldn't have mattered. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we'd be sitting in prison, not innocent men in prison.
So what she said is she was pissed that she didn't have the jury that they have in DC.
Exactly. Because again, in DC, we would have never taken a plea deal no matter what. And again, we could have probably had our charges dropped if we would have turned on Dar and implemented him into something that we had no idea what the hell was going on, let alone implementing somebody else into. But we could have taken the easy way out, but we fought. In DC is a whole different story, though. You know, there's several people that they pled guilty that we're facing. We have a friend of ours. I'm not going to mention his name because I don't want the FBI messing with him. He was facing 27 years in prison over January 6th. He ended up taking a plea agreement, no felonies, got a misdemeanor out of it, and they still put him in prison for 6.5 years on a misdemeanor.
That's ridiculous.
But he would have gotten 27 years, and you're not going to get a fair trial in DC. What is it, 93 or 97% voted for Biden? You're not going to, as political as it is, you'll never get a fair trial there if you do not completely align with these people. And if you did, you would never go to trial. So,
and there's a whole constitutional argument there because Constitution says a trial by a jury of your peers.
Yeah.
If you're being tried, if you, it doesn't matter if you went and visited DC. If you're California, Texas, Ohio, and you're being tried by a jury in DC, that's not a jury of your peers.
No.
You know, there's. I'm hoping that there's going to be some constitutional attorneys that'll take on that fight. There's a lot of legislation that needs to be had, not for new laws, but to remove some of these unlawful things that's doing. We don't need any more laws. It's absolutely ridiculous. Gentlemen, we got to wrap this up here. One, financially, I know you guys said, you know, you have these commercial guys that are keeping you guys afloat, but do you guys have any crowdfunding? If there's people that are moved by your story and are like, hey, you know, I'd like to donate, you know, some coffee money or, you know, whatever, is there a place where people can go to reach out to help you out?
No, you know, before we went to trial, my sister set up Give, Send, Go, and the FBI basically made it non-workable. People tried to donate, and it would freeze up their phones and stuff. You know, if people wanted to donate to Christina for her film,
for her documentary,
I would be okay with that.
Yeah, we financially can't help Christina, and she has been, she's been the rock for everybody. You know, when you actually have a media person, she's promoting the story, she's funding it out of her pocket. If we had the money, we should have filed bankruptcy probably, you know, but we didn't. We're making ends meet. It's not like what we used to have, but she has went out of her way. The guys that were found guilty in Jackson, there was 3 guys in the state. They were instantly set to federal prison. They were out of
different states.
They were sent out there because their appeals were trying to go through. She's took it upon herself. She bought like law books for these guys, so she's sent them. I mean, she's the real deal, and I don't know why. I give her the utmost respect. We don't know her. She don't know us. She just looked at the case, knew it was bullshit, and she's been like the voice that has stood up, and they constantly harass her. I would love to see them actually, you know, if you want to donate for us or help us out, give it to her. let her get this film out, and she knows, again, more about this case than I do. Every time we talk to her, I learn more about my life and what's been said about me than I've ever even heard. So I'm like, it's new to me, but she deserves that respect and the support. Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you, when you say, I don't know why she does it, I'll tell you why. Because she's actually a real patriot. It's somebody who's seen something that ain't right and says, I'm going to do something about it.
Yeah.
And for those that want to go and are like, if you joined late again, you want to know, he's talking about, if you want to follow her on X, formerly Twitter, her handle is @NotRadix. So NOTRADIX. And she has a website, KandKfilm.com. And that's and actually spelled out AND. So KANDK film.com. So you guys can help support the stuff and the work that she's doing. Well, gentlemen, I'll tell you,
she's got a trailer too, while you're speaking about it, on the K&K Films. She's got a trailer for the documentary, and she's supposed to be releasing part of it here soon, so they can actually watch and see what she has done.
Right on. So I'll tell you guys what I'll do. I'll go and I'll take a look at that website. I'll grab the trailer and I'll put it on the tail end of this, so people can enjoy the work that she's doing.
That would be fun.
I'll tell you what, Bill, Mike, we all kind of knew about the story, but to speak to you gentlemen and to hear your side of it, it's just, it's discouraging to know that this is where our Department of Justice is, but then it's also reassuring to know that there's men out there that are not going to bend the knee, and it doesn't matter how scary it looks. They're going to stand up and fight and say, no, listen, you're wrong. And we're going to fight over this. And ultimately, because you guys chose that fight and had the faith, you're free men today, and you help chip away at exposing the corruptness that's going on in our government. And for that, it's an honor to have you guys on this podcast.
Well, it's an honor to be here, man.
So I will keep you guys and your families in my prayers. As far as Sheriff Dar Leaf, he's going to be okay, or are you guys concerned that they're going to come after this man?
They've actually tried. I don't want to get into it too much with it. I don't know how much he wants let out, but they've tried a couple times. And he's a tough man, and he's always been good for the people. And for some reason, our government doesn't like that.
Yeah, he's the most constitutional sheriff probably in the country. I mean, I don't know if I can say that and be, but he is. He stands for his people. He stands for his constituents. The reason why they started going after him is because he was right there, and he spoke out about against the lockdowns and everything else. And now that he's looking into election fraud, I believe that's why they're going after him, because he's not their team player. He's the constitutionalist. So I do believe that's why they're after him.
They have the fear of him because they can't control him, because he actually believes in his oath. Well, then prayers to both of you gentlemen, and prayers to the sheriff. And hopefully we talk to you guys soon, and we get some more good information from you guys. So with that, you guys, I'm going to break to commercial. We'll come back from the trailer, and I'll catch you guys tomorrow night, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. This is the AlphaWarrior Show. First in, last out. Semper Fi, everybody.
My Towels solved the problem that we've all had with towels. You go into the stores and they feel lotiony and soft, but then you get them home and they wind dry you. That's why I made My Towels. They actually work, they're soft, and they absorb. And now I'm excited to announce 2 brand new lines of My Towels. What makes them the best towels ever is they're now made with 100% long staple Shapir cotton. This is a combed ring spun cotton that makes My Towels even softer and more absorbent than ever. And now you get a 6-piece set for an amazing introductory sale price as low as $29.98. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to get My Towels for only $29.98. Or you can get my designer premium line for just $20 more. Either way, you save 50% now on all My Towels. They actually work. What a concept. This offer won't last long, so please order now.
mypillow.com.
Earlier today, Attorney General Dana Nessel was joined by officials from the Department of Justice and the FBI to announce state and federal charges against 13 members of 2 militia groups who were preparing to kidnap and possibly kill me.
We're grateful to the FBI and law enforcement to discover these domestic terrorists and stop them. It's the sort of behavior you might expect from ISIS.
You might see a number that high in a sprawling narcotics conspiracy that stretches from coast to coast and beyond. That's a pretty high number in a case like this. It really reflects, I think, how deeply the government has been diving into this investigation to try to make these cases.
It was just literally a bunch of working class guys who on the weekend got together and, exercised their rights and trained with firearms. So the FBI says, hey, we'll just pay for everything.
Who arranged the meeting? The FBI's paid provocateur. Robeson was getting paid to set this stuff up.
So they make the route, they set the locations, they make the plan, they do everything, and Adam's literally just sitting in the basement of a vacuum repair shop smoking blunts all day.
You're going to hear that my client was the leader of this group. But I think you're also going to hear that there was an election held to identify the leader, and it was Dan.
How can I frame this social situation to make this naive person appear to be a dangerous, violent terrorist? The whole goal was for the FBI to spend millions of dollars to create militia groups, record them saying offensive stuff, and then frame them in a fake conspiracy.
Are you worried about the effects that higher inflation rates will have on your investments? Are you trying to secure your retirement savings against losses, but you notice that inflation is a hot topic these days? But how dangerous are low inflation rates on your retirement savings? An inflation rate of 2% may not seem like much, but it means that prices will just about quintuple over the lifetime of the average American. And 4% average inflation rate means that something that costs $1 when they're born will cost $23 when they die. That demonstrates the danger of even low inflation rates. So when it comes to gold and inflation rates, many investors want to know whether inflation rates have an effect on gold prices. What history indicates is that over the long term, increased inflation should lead to correspondingly higher gold prices. From September 1971 to August 2020, gold grew 7.5 times as much as inflation. Not only can an investment in physical gold help protect your assets against the damage done by inflation, it can also help grow the value of your retirement portfolio over the long term. If you're looking to protect your retirement assets, why wait until stock markets crash and gold begins to rise in price?